over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great stuff, picks, predictions, previews, all kinds of good stuff coming your way here this week for college football and the NFL. Parker Michael's doing his thing in the NHL. Situational betting tips from me for both the NHL and college football. My college football power ratings. And once all the dust settles and we know who's going to play in the ALCS and the NLCS, I'll write those previews up for you over at the website as well. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino. At BetDSI, it's only a game until you bet it. We start things off with our first guest here. That is professional handicapper Bryan Leonard from WagerTalk.com. Bryan, how's it going today, man?
Everything's going great. Excited for the start of hockey season and starting to work on basketball. It's a busy time of year.
It is a busy time of year. It's a never-ending sports betting calendar, to say the least. And are you doing a lot of college stuff early on, or are you mostly looking at the NBA?
I'm just starting. Today is my first day I've dedicated to it. It's a long day for me. I've got videos to do, and then I've got a 2-hour spot on Sports Grid tonight. But, yeah, this is the first day I'm really starting to get into it. I don't do as much in college basketball. I tend to rely on people I know. Ralph Michaels is very good in college basketball. We trade off a lot of stuff. I do some baseball for him. And but NBA is where I got my start, years and years ago. And even though it's a different game today because of all the times where players are sitting out, it's still something that I've loved over the years. And if you could find some good spots, and one of the things I like to do, because obviously the Sports Grid I'm doing tonight is a live betting show. I do a lot of live betting. And when you can get into the routine in the NBA where the certain times people are sitting, they bring in, like back when LeBron played for Cleveland, you knew exactly when he was coming in and out of the game. The analytics from the sportsbook doesn't really show that. So you were able to plan ahead and bet against the Cavs when he would be out of the lineup and bet on him when he was coming back, that kind of thing. So if you're able to chart things like that, I know I used to, there was a website called popcorn.com or popcornsports.com or something, and they had that each and every game. They would chart when the guy would come in and out of lineup. So after a while, you kind of got the feel on that, and it's really good for live betting.
It is really good for live betting. And also you talk about guys getting in foul trouble, and, star guy sits with 2 or 3 fouls in the first half, especially in college basketball. That can really swing the complexion of a game as well. So a lot of good live betting opportunities to be sure there in basketball. And something else that kind of lends itself well to live betting is the Major League Baseball playoffs. And we've got 2 Game 5s coming up tonight. Cardinals, Braves, the first one at 5 o'clock. Nationals, Dodgers, the second one, 8:30. Of course, both of those Eastern time. Hopefully you get a chance to listen to the show before these games go off. But we'll spend a little more time on the late game than the early game just because of the time frame in which our listeners check out the show. But this first game here, Bryan, Cardinals and Braves, Jack Flaherty, Mike Foltynewicz, rematch of Game 2. I thought that this series was not over, but I thought it was pretty close to it after the Cardinals won Game 1. Then Mike Foltynewicz comes out, throws a gem in Game 2. They beat Jack Flaherty. They'll have to do it again here to advance. And this game is effectively a coin flip with juice kind of game.
It definitely is. And I play fantasy baseball in one league with you, and I had both of these guys on my team this year, which is one of the reasons why I won it. But both pitchers pitched much better in the second half of the season. Flaherty's gotten all the recognition, and for a good reason. He hasn't given up more than 1 home run in a game since June 25th, which is kind of amazing. And Foltynewicz obviously coming off the injury, and I struggled early on, but started to find himself as the season went on. So both teams have pitchers in here that they want. It wasn't like they're forced to put somebody in here, sort of like how Verlander was forced to come back on a short rest yesterday, which I didn't understand at all. And it turns out that it was a bad decision. But if you were to ask either team who they wanted on the mound, these are the 2 they wanted. So that's what you really like when you're coming down to Game 7. And, we find the same with Strasburg and Buehler in the following game. Two pitchers who are at the top of their game and are pitching for all the marbles. But yeah, you talked about Flaherty being a slight favorite here in what could be really a pick'em game. Somewhat surprising to me when you take a look at St. Louis on the road. They've just been, they're not pedestrian, but they're just a few games over 500. Atlanta's been very good at home this year, so that's one of the advantages for the Braves. Problem is, how do you go against Flaherty here? I think you talked about this early on last week, that he was going to get these key spots to be able to come in and pitch for him, and he has just been unhittable at this point. The only way I could play this game, based on the way the two pitchers are pitching, knowing that all the relievers basically are hands on deck, all the starters that have had some time to rest are hands on deck, is to play this game under. I talked about Flaherty with the home runs, only giving up the one home run a game at the worst since June 25th. Fulton Evans, since he started playing a little bit better, his home runs have really gone down. And it's going to be a game where you're not going to see a lot of runners. It may be better to play this under the runs, hits, errors, but it's something I'm going to take a look at, either the under in the game or the under run hits, errors in this contest, and enjoy what should be just a terrific baseball game.
Yeah, and I like what you brought up about, these are kind of the two guys that you would want, given how Flaherty pitched down the stretch and given how Fulton Evans pitched down the stretch. Yesterday, I think Houston probably could have gone with Wade Miley. I'm not sure if he was on the roster or not, but I feel like that's the spot you go with a guy like Miley against that left-handed heavy Rays lineup. Then maybe you use Verlander in relief. So you go from Miley at 86 with his ground ball stuff to Verlander pumping 99, 100 out there. That's the route that I would have gone, being Houston in that spot. Rays cobble it together with a bullpen game and an opener there in Diego Castillo. So we will have game 5 to talk about in a couple of seconds there with that one on Thursday. But Strasburg and Buehler tonight. Dodgers getting bet up here in the marketplace, up from $1.45 to 65 or 70 cents out there. Strasburg, hey, this is a guy who's also had a very, very good season. Buehler started off a little bit slow. The Dodgers kind of mishandled him in spring training. He had a little bit of a mild injury. They wanted to lower his workload coming off of last season. And once he found a groove, he was back to being the Walker Buehler that we expected. So is this line just too high, or do you think that this line move is pretty justified?
Yeah, I think it's justified. I'm looking to play the Dodgers here. Don't know if they'll get there. As you mentioned, the line has gone up here. Most people will look at this and take into account the entire season for these teams. Keep in mind, now that we're in the playoffs and the starters are available, the Washington starters are so much better than the Washington relievers. You're going to get less of the guys in the bullpen that they had to put out there early in the season and during the regular season because a starter would struggle a little bit, and then they bring the relievers in. And we all know how struggling that bullpen has been all season long. But now that the games are down to, do or die at this point, we're not going to see any of those type of relievers in this game. So if Strasburg does get hit, they're going to come back with another quality starter, or the back end of the bullpen will get more of a chance to get in this. So that's something that you'll see differently than you will, because the Dodgers bullpen to me is a lot better than Washington's, but it's a different situation here. I prefer the Buehler side, mostly because he's pitching at home. Washington on the road, not a terrific road team, but the Dodgers just have been tremendous at home all season long. They started this series terrifically at home again. And if you could get, to me, the best team in the National League, and obviously the best record in the National League is the Dodgers. You got them with the best pitcher on the mound in a Game 7. This is what it's built for. And I think the Dodgers come away here. The line may be getting away from us, so I don't know if I'll have a play on it. But that's the side I'm looking for in this one.
Yeah, Washington probably likely to go with Patrick Corbin as their first reliever out of the bullpen if they need him following Strasburg. So, that's something for you to keep in mind here from a live betting standpoint, that, as you mentioned, the middle reliever type guys for Washington probably won't see the field here. It's going to be Strasburg. It's going to be Corbin. if Scherzer can face a batter or two, it'll be him. And then guys like Doolittle and Hudson. So it'll be the back end and the starters. Maybe even Anibal Sanchez gets a look here. But it will be a much different type of game plan really for both of these teams, because the Dodgers, with their great pitching depth, again, some of their guys that work in a starting capacity in the regular season now available in a relief capacity here. So, we'll see who wins these two games today. That's obviously going to make up our NLCS. But, you got to kind of wonder here. I mean, obviously the Dodgers favored over both teams. I would think Washington would be favored over St. Louis despite not having home field advantage, and Atlanta probably a small favorite over Washington, right?
I would agree. A lot of that being that Flaherty is the clear leader for St. Louis, and he's just coming off of this game, pitching in the game 5 here, and then he'll probably be back for game 3, I would guess, if they go to the next round. They may do him 3 and 7 if they get to that point. This whole series with St. Louis and Atlanta was based a lot on Flaherty and when he's available. So that makes a lot of sense. The Dodgers will be favored over whoever they play. And probably about the same amount, I would guess, based on the St. Louis-Atlanta series. Maybe slightly lesser favorite against Atlanta because, like I said, Flaherty wouldn't be able to go till game 3. The Dodgers should be favored both ways, and in Washington's bats, I prefer them over, especially at St. Louis if they get to that the next series. But all these teams are good teams, and it's a lot of fun to watch good baseball. I know we're both from Cleveland, and even though I'm a Cleveland Indians fan, I did not want the Cleveland Indians to make the playoffs because we're not one of the better teams, and I want to enjoy good baseball. And Tampa has shown that they're a quality team, at least at home. We saw that yesterday. I was able to get that victory with Tampa yesterday, and we'll see what happens coming up. But Tampa's proved themselves to play in that division and be able to win as many games as they did. And we've seen what they've done at home. And congratulations to the Rays fans who finally decided that they have a baseball team in town. I didn't know if they realized that before.
Yeah, for sure. And, there were two big winners yesterday in that game 4 between the Astros and the Rays. One obviously was the Rays to extend the series. The other was the New York Yankees, because now Houston has to use Gerrit Cole in that winner-take-all game on Thursday. And Tyler Glasnow actually pitched really well for the first few innings of game 1. Kind of ran into some issues the second and third time through the order, as most guys do. But Houston having to burn Cole is a real big deal. And again, maybe Tampa does win and advance here, but the Astros are a minus 250 to minus 275 favorite out there in the market, depending on where you look for Thursday night's game. And they should win, and they should advance. But having to use Verlander on short rest in game 4 and now use Gerrit Cole, that's going to change what happens here for this ALCS line, assuming that Houston does win. Yeah,
it definitely does. And, if you're Tampa, you're coming in this game, as they say, playing on casino money because you weren't expected to be here, whereas Houston hasn't had to deal with adversity. They've gotten off to a big divisional lead all season long. They were expected to just cruise right through the American League. The only concern they would have would be the Yankees, I believe. And now here they are in a must-win situation. Now, obviously, in a must-win situation, you probably couldn't ask for a better pitcher than Gerrit Cole to be on the mound. But that's some pressure that Houston hasn't felt this year, and it'll be interesting to see how they come out of that. I'd prefer the Houston side. Don't know if they'll get there, obviously, because of the line out there. But this is something that they played free and easy all season long. Different situation come the game 5 here. We'll see how they react to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a big spot for Gerrit Cole, a guy that wasn't on that World Series team a couple of years ago. He was a guy that picked up last year. So, there is that element to it too, where this is a pretty big start for Gerrit Cole now as well, who obviously has the stuff to get through it. I mean, nobody's going to question that. But, this is one of those spots where, as you said, for Houston, they're really up against it here, whereas Tampa Bay is playing with that house money. So, again, we'll see what happens here in this one. Obviously, I do think that, Houston is very likely to advance here, and the line would certainly suggest that too. But still, as you said, a tougher spot here for Houston than meets the eye. And you know what? Also, too, if you're Tampa Bay and you can throw any starter at Houston, Tyler Glasnow is the one. It's a very right-handed heavy Houston lineup. Glasnow has elite level stuff, very good at tunneling the fastball and the curveball. A guy who really benefited not just from the trade, but also from having a pitching coach who's 6'6" or 6'7", whatever Kyle Snyder is. He was able to see from Glasnow's point of view, literally and figuratively, to help him develop as a pitcher. So I think this could be a really low-scoring game at the outset as well.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I like Tampa yesterday, obviously the Verlander situation, but if you take a look at Tampa and Houston's records versus righties, they're almost exactly the same. Where Houston has really been tremendous this year is against lefties. And I know it was a bullpen game yesterday, and it all came down to the lefties coming out of the Tampa Bay bullpen, and they had them on such a short leash that they were doing the mix and match, and it worked out very well for them. The problem going in was if Tampa would have had to extend the lefties, then they were in trouble. But once the lefties started getting in a little bit of danger, they ended up coming in and bringing somebody else in. So that worked out very well. Great coaching job by Cash in Tampa Bay yesterday.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I wish the Indians still had Kevin Cash as opposed to Terry Francona, but that's a discussion for another day here on the show. And as we transition over to the football side of things, the next part of Bang the Book Radio brought to you by the TRNDS app, TRNDS, the mobile app available on iOS only, but there is a website, and that is trnds-sports.com. So when you think about all the stuff that's going on out here in the football marketplace, we talked about basketball coming up here very soon as well. It can be a real challenge to go out there and find those betting trends for the different situations in order to help you make your plays, in order to help you narrow down the card. It can be difficult. It can be time consuming, but you want to find those angles coming off of a loss, head to head against a certain opponent, in cold weather, after a bye. A lot of bye weeks right now in the NFL, 2 bye weeks this year in college football as well. So how do these teams do with extra prep time? The TRNDS app simplifies access to powerful data, allowing users to quickly self-source and share meaningful sports betting trends. You can identify new betting angles. You can share them on social media from your mobile phone. Don't just be a consumer of stats. Create your own views on the game. Again, the TRNDS app is available in the App Store, and that is TRNDS. And for the first 100 users who sign up by using the link trnds-sports.com/bangthebook, again, the first 100 users will get a free month of the premium subscription tier to either the TRNDS app or to the website trnds-sports.com. All right, Brian, so as we look at things on the college football side of the spectrum here, week 7 already, man. Can you believe how fast this season's flying by?
It really is, and we were all excited about the football. We all did all that preseason prep, and now here we go. We're halfway through the season, basically.
I got to say, man, I know we're not going to talk about this game, but real quickly here, this Wednesday night game, what an interesting set of line moves. App State went from +1 to +3, came back down. Some places had them -1. Now the line's flipped again with Louisiana a favorite. Kind of fun here to see this going on with the standalone Sun Belt game.
Yeah, it is. I can proudly say I haven't lost a Wednesday football game all season long, and it's going to continue because I didn't have a play on this one. If I would have a play on this one, I would have tended to look towards the under. I believe it just got hit a little bit and it's going down, but that's the only way I could look based on the importance of this game. We probably got the 2 best teams in that conference going head-to-head here, national TV. The importance of the game tends to make me want to look for the under in situations like that. But my numbers basically had Lafayette 1. I was looking to catch a 3 either way. You never saw it. So it's a pass for me, but it's good. I'm a MAC fan. You're a MAC fan. We both went to Akron. It's good for the smaller conferences to be able to play in these nationally televised games. I just hope that it's a competitive game and people can enjoy it. Last thing you want to see is blowout when you get a chance on a national television performance. It's good for the team that wins, but I don't think it looks good for the conference overall.
Speaking of Akron, two things. One, last week I joked about the next time they send me something requesting money. Well, I actually got something that day requesting money from Akron, which was just perfect timing. But also, they're a 14-point home underdog to Kent State this week. How effing embarrassing for our alma mater.
It definitely is, but I'll tell you, if I had to play this, I've got to play Akron. My numbers are showing that the line should be roughly about 9, and it's 14. And I know Akron has been terrible, but keep in mind this: they had last week off. They had a bye after that wonderful game against UMass, I believe, was the last time they took the field. A game that I made some money on because it was a spike bet. I couldn't believe that Akron was favored over anybody. But they have the extra week to prepare. You have a new coaching staff in there. It gives them extra time. I always give that as a major edge when you have a new coaching staff that's coming off of a bye. They can put in a lot of plays that they didn't have a chance to earlier. Whether it's Akron or anybody, I think that's a nice angle to look at. And Kent is coming off of a bruising game against Wisconsin, and they weren't competitive, and they probably didn't go out there to win the game. They were looking for the paycheck. But still, when you got a team that runs the ball down your throat as much as Wisconsin does, very physical on both sides of the ball, that's going to take a toll on you here. So I haven't bet Akron yet, but I did the spike bet against them. If it hits 14.5, I might have a spike bet on Akron this week.
I took Kent, but I got them at -9 or 9.5 or something like that on the Bet Online opener. So I got some line value. I'm happy with that, and I'm cool with rooting against my alma mater, I guess. All right, so a couple of games I wanted to get to here. I know typically we talk MAC, and of course we found a way to work it in here. But I want to talk about a couple of marquee games with you here this week. We'll kind of change things up a little bit. Beginning with game 183-184, Alabama and Texas A&M. Alabama anywhere from a 16 to a 17-point favorite. The 17s, by and large, at the more public shops out there. The 16, not surprisingly, out at Pinnacle, the sharpest in the offshore marketplace. And obviously for those that live in states where you can bet within the state or bet online, certainly look around for the best odds that are out there. But this is one of those interesting spots where you would think Alabama should get tested for the first time this year. And of course, they're still a 3-score road favorite anyway.
I thought going into the season that this would be a game that they'd be tested. After watching these teams play a little bit, I'm not so sure they will. Alabama, to me, along with Ohio State, who I have like right there, neck and neck in the power ratings as the two best teams. Alabama, major concern is stopping the run. And not a lot has been made of it, but teams can run the football on Alabama. But when you take a look at Texas A&M, they can't run the football. They've yet to average 3 yards per carry against any team in the FBS. That's a weakness for Texas A&M. And if you can't run the football, take some time off the clock, we've seen what Alabama can do offensively through the passing game this year, in the last couple of years, actually. Alabama's a team who doesn't turn the ball over. They're obviously one of the best coached teams in college football. And that's something when you're playing a team and you're a big underdog, the way you win these games is forcing turnovers. And A&M does not force a lot of turnovers. In fact, A&M is a team who themselves turns the ball over a lot. They've lost the turnover battle in 4 straight games in which they had the better players. So now they're going up against an Alabama team who has probably the most talented, I don't know if it's even probable, the most talented team in college football. They're very physical. And you go into this game, and one of the things I always try to do is try to figure out who is going to win the turnover battle. I have no doubt in this game that Alabama is going to win the turnover battle. They're probably going to win by multiple turnovers. I would say, 2 turnovers in this game. And if you're betting on teams who win the turnover battle by 2 or more, you're going to make some money. And Alabama against a team who cannot run the football to slow them down offensively, this could very well be a blowout situation. I don't know if I'll make Alabama as a play, but it's one that I'm definitely interested in.
What do you make of the line coming down? Is it just that? Is it just the narrative of, well, this is the first, real team Alabama's played?
I think it is. Alabama's had a pretty easy schedule thus far, and Texas A&M, they played Clemson in that game earlier this season, so they have played a quality opponent, although that one was on the road. Yeah, people are always looking to find ways to bet against Alabama, and one of the tips I got when I moved to town here, I was talking to Kenny White, who started LVSC, and I told him, I said, a lot of the losses I have are trying to fade, top teams. And he said, you don't want to fade a top 5 team because those teams not only are so good and they're so much better than anybody else that they can name the score, they're also trying to please their boosters. And obviously that's a major concern. I mean, they're not going to come out and say it, but if you could tack on an extra touchdown late in the game to cover the spread, they will, because they're in so many games that are just non-competitive. And cutting out those games against the top 5 teams have really helped my win percentage over the year, because I might see value on it. It's sort of like, we talked about the Akron game. It's sort of like betting on the teams, because every week my numbers say I should be on UMass, my numbers say I should be on Connecticut, they should be on Akron, but yet they don't win. And I've stopped giving out those plays and stopped betting those plays myself. So there's weaknesses at the top and at the bottom, and your power rating numbers just don't really work as well there as they do in the middle of the the college football rankings.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also, too, for Alabama here, I mean, I don't know if this matters, and obviously you don't think about it going into this game, but if you can put a hurting on Texas A&M, you want to do it, because if you lose to LSU or something happens in the Iron Bowl or something happens against Georgia in the SEC title game, you want some style points in games like this where it looks like you're playing a good opponent, whereas we all know that Texas A&M pretty inferior to Alabama, but still, style points may end up mattering if you're trying to make the playoff here as a one-loss team, with 3 really tough games left on the schedule here for the Crimson Tide. How about game 203, 204 here in the Big Ten? This has been a line that has gone up, gone down, gone back up. This is a line that's bounced around a ton, basically. Penn State and Iowa up from 2.5. This line actually got as high as -5 before coming back down. Now it's 3.5 or 4 out there market wide. What do you think about this one, Brian? Because I have a side I definitely like. I've already played it. But what do you think about this game?
I have a side I like too, and I haven't played it yet because I think I can get a little bit better. Penn State at Iowa. Penn State has played 4 of their 5 games at home. Keep that in mind. They're a much better team when they play at home. Their toughest opponent so far this year has been Pitt. They played an extremely easy schedule. And if we remember that Pitt game, Pitt gave them all they could handle. And that was a major surprise for a lot of people. Pitt turned out, they beat Central Florida later on. So Pitt's a decent team. They're not a team of the caliber of Iowa, but they're a decent team. But Penn State's been living high on the hog so far this year. And, you take a look at Iowa. Sure, they lose that game last week to Michigan, and I had Michigan in that game, and that was a barn burner in that one. But check out what Iowa's done defensively. They played 5 FBS games. They've allowed 44 total points. That's just amazing to me. 8.8 points a game against FBS competition. If you take a look at first down advantage, that's a team that is able to move the ball on a consistent basis. They don't have to worry about the big explosive play. And that's the problem with Iowa. They're not going to have too many explosive plays. But with that defense, they usually are not going to need them because they're not going to be behind in the games. But they're plus 54 in first down advantage on the season, which is tremendous. That's like 10, 11 first downs per game. They're having more than the opposition. That's a team I want to back here. And Penn State's hasn't played a defense nearly this strong so far. I like Iowa. I think Iowa's going to win straight up here. And people saw them nationally televised last week against Michigan. They couldn't do a thing. Well, this Penn State defense isn't that Michigan defense. And I happen to think the wrong team is favored here. Iowa will be on my card this weekend.
Yeah, in the interest of time, we'll jump over to the NFL, but I did take Iowa at 4.5. Happy to grab that number, and they are definitely the side to me and the side that I do like there in that Big Ten matchup. As I said, we'll move over to the NFL for a few minutes here, and I want to touch on this Saints and Jacksonville game real quickly because a lot of people faded Teddy Bridgewater last week. A lot of people taking the Buccaneers in what was not a very good spot for Tampa Bay, but there was such an anti-Bridgewater sentiment out there that people just flocked to fade the Saints. And of course, they won that game and won that game comfortably. Now the Saints go on the road to take on Jacksonville. And again, the market coming in against Bridgewater in New Orleans.
Yeah, it definitely has. Last week, I think it was just obviously a major overreaction. Keep in mind, Teddy Bridgewater has played this way his entire career. The guy wins. And we see this all the time. Sure, he's not pretty, but he doesn't make the mistakes. He doesn't throw the ball very far downfield. That's the major concern with Bridgewater. His air passing is shorter than anybody else, I believe, in the league. He doesn't throw the ball deep downfield, but you've got a New Orleans team. You know, it wasn't just Drew Brees. This team has a lot of talent. The running game is very good here. And when you've got a quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over and you've got a running game that can move the chains, that's something a lot of people that like the flash of the long passes to the wide receivers, those kind of things, they're going to sour on a team like that in New Orleans. And you know, this is one of the best coached teams in the NFL. And so it's tough for me to go against New Orleans. And off the original line last week, sure, I thought Tampa had some value. But after Tampa moved as much as it did, it lost all types of value, especially from a hit or miss team in Tampa Bay, which I call them a cherry bomb. One day they look like a cherry, the next day they get bombed. I mean, it's just one of those teams that you're not going to get the general good slate from top to bottom that you get out of a team like a New Orleans. Jacksonville is a team that a lot of people don't like to bet on because they're just not very good offensively, but defensively, they're very good. This one right here, the line at 1.5 right now shows me that this is a situation where I should be playing New Orleans on the teaser. 1.5, 44 currently right there, 6-point teaser takes you over that because I don't trust either one of these offenses. I think both teams are going to try to do the same thing. They're going to try to run the football, take time off the clock, and put themselves in with their special teams in good field position. Low scoring game, catching 7.5 on a teaser. That's the way I would look at this one.
Yeah, and there are some games that go through that 3-7 corridor. I don't think I would do it with Carolina and Tampa Bay because London games are just a little bit weird. Total 47 for that one. You and I talked before we started recording here about Seattle and Cleveland. Same thing, the total maybe a little bit high for a teaser there. But New Orleans plus 7.5, Tennessee plus 8, plus 8.5. The Wong teaser that you're looking for here this week in the NFL. And Brian, to finish up, I regret that I'm going to do this to you, but I do want to get somebody's thoughts on this game here this week. Washington and Miami. Washington, a 3.5-point road favorite. They fired Jay Gruden here this week, so obviously some things going to change there for Washington. For Miami, this could very well be their only shot at winning a game here this season. So you've got to think they come fully focused. Is there any way, though, that you can play this game?
Oh, yeah. Anytime there's a game on the schedule, you can find edges. When Washington fired their coach, I thought, good. I like it when they fire the coach. But then they bring Callahan in as the head coach, and the first thing out of his mouth is we need to run the ball a little bit more, which is exactly the opposite of what you want to do in the NFL in this decade. Keeps me away from Washington. From the Miami standpoint, they are coming off of a bye. I think a lot of people have forgotten how bad Miami is, which I can understand. They're not fresh in your mind like Washington was last week, and they just get run over after scoring the first touchdown in that game. But Miami coming into this game, what I like about it is I think I'm going to have a play on the over here because this game is being based on when you see a 41.5, you rarely see two defenses, especially in the secondary, as bad as these two teams are. You just don't see 41.5s and 41s with some defensive problems that each of these teams have. Both teams are dropping down in talent-wise, obviously, from the teams that they played before. So, I think the offenses will do a little bit more here. But here's my question. Now, Miami has already said coming into the season, in more ways than one, that they're going to be tanking this year. Washington is at the point where they want to be tanking if they're smart enough. You never know about the Redskins' situation with management. But will the coaches and management come down and prevent their own teams from winning here? Because if Miami gets this victory, they may not get the number one draft choice in the NFL this year, as bad as Washington has been. So that's a concern for me. So only way I could look at this game is to play the over. I think it will go over because the offenses aren't great. At least the Miami offenses are great, but I want no part of these defenses trying to keep the opposition down. But it'll be an interesting chess match. It's sort of like at the end of the NBA season when you have two teams fighting for the number one pick and you don't know who's going to be playing in the fourth quarter. That kind of concerns me here.
Bryan Leonard, professional handicapper over at wagertalk.com. I know you don't have a Wednesday night college football game of the year tonight, but what do you have going on over there?
I actually have a big 5% play going in Saturday football. 29-9 on our 5% plays. I believe it covers the last year. And also 17-4 in college football. Been on just a tremendous run. Swept the board last Sunday in the NFL. I can't complain at all. 3-0 in the Major League Baseball playoffs. It's been on a nice run here, and we've got some plays up for this weekend. And once again, I'll be doing that live in-game betting on the podcast today on the internet and doing videos. Just a busy time, and everything's going really well for me right now. I can't complain. A lot of work, as we talked about, with the basketball and everything coming up. But hey, if you're winning, you don't mind coming into work early, and that's the way it's been, and hopefully it continues.
Bryan Leonard, again, you can find his work over at wagertalk.com and also find him on Twitter at BLeonardSports. Bryan, appreciate your time as always, man. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks. Best of luck to everyone.